No one is born wanting to rebel. But when silence is strangled, when love becomes a weapon of punishment, and when a woman is imprisoned in the gilded cage of filial piety constructed by society, then rebellion is no longer a choice. It becomes a necessity to preserve one's last shred of dignity. Her name was Nye. A gentle name, though her life was anything but gentle. She hadn't killed anyone, hadn't stolen, hadn't defied morality. All she did was love her husband, and for that she was deemed unfilial, accused of being shameless, and branded as disrespectful. Just because she dared to hold her husband's hand in front of her mother-in-law. This isn't just one woman's story. This is the echo of a generation, the quiet cries of daughters-in-law in kitchens, the bowed heads of wives in dimly lit rooms, the smiles of women who bleed silently behind their eyes. Nye was born in a peaceful rural village where people believed that if a woman was obedient, diligent, and kept her mouth shut, she would be loved. From a young age, she was a good girl, carrying water, cooking rice, taking care of her parents, never once talking back to her elders. But obedience didn't grant her an easier life. Her parents died early in a traffic accident when she was still in ninth grade. Since then, she lived with a distant uncle, doing chores and studying when she could. She believed that one day, when she had a family of her own, she'd finally find true peace. Then she met Nathan. Nathan was the dream she never dared to wish for. A city man, well-spoken, warm eyes, steady hands. Not movie star handsome, but solid and kind. Someone whose shoulder seemed strong enough to lean on for a lifetime. They met working on a youth volunteer project. Shared meals, long days in the field, laughter over plastic stools, all of it brought them closer. Not long after, they married. A modest but cozy wedding. Nye entered her husband's home holding tightly to his promise. "I'll always stand by you." But life isn't a fairy tale, and promises, when faced with pride, tradition, and power, quickly become the faintest sounds. Nathan's mother, Madame Than, was a stern, quiet woman whose words cut sharper than knives. She didn't need to scream or hit. Her gaze alone could make even the happiest child freeze in place. To her, Nathan was her greatest achievement, and anyone who got too close to that achievement, even his legal wife, was a threat. On Mnai's first day as a daughter-in-law, she got a gentle reminder when she dared sit beside her husband and poured him tea without first asking his mother. Madame Than didn't yell. She just looked Nye up and down and said, "A proper daughter-in-law knows her place. Don't be so brazen." It was the first cut to her pride, but it would not be the last. Nye stopped holding Nathan's hand when his mother was around. No more shared laughter at dinner, no more private words exchanged in the hallway. Meals became silent plays, everyone performing, emotions buried behind layers of tradition. At first, Nathan asked gently, "Why are you acting so distant?" When Nye confided that she felt constantly watched and judged, he sighed and said, "Mom's just old, don't take it personally." He never asked again. Nye didn't blame Nathan at first. She knew how hard it was to untangle a man from the mother who raised him. But what hurt most was his silence. She didn't need him to shout or fight, she just needed him to see her. Each day, Nye faded more and more. In a house of three, she was the only one walking on eggshells. Her words were too opinionated, her glances were too flirtatious, her affection was too much. Love became her crime. She started losing sleep. She'd wake in the night, stare at the ceiling, look at the man beside her, once the source of joy, now a stranger with whom she shared a bed. Nathan no longer asked what was wrong. He didn't notice the dark circles under her eyes or the way she flinched when spoken to harshly. To him, the quiet meant peace. To her, it meant slow death. One afternoon, she accidentally broke a bowl while setting the table. The sharp crack drew Madame Than from the living room. Careless girls make terrible wives. If you can't even handle the kitchen, what else can you handle? Nye bent to gather the shards with trembling fingers. The older woman walked away without another word, but her silence lingered in the air like a curse. That night, Nye cried, not loudly, just quiet tears into her pillow. Nathan turned over and placed a hand on her shoulder but said nothing, not even a whisper of comfort. And that silence, it cut deeper than anything else. Days blurred into weeks. Mnai's life became a string of chores and caution. But one day, while dropping off laundry, she ran into Mai, an old friend from her volunteering days. Mai was vibrant, sharp, and city-bred. She took one look at Mai and gasped, "You're cold. Like you don't have any life left in you." They sat at a roadside stall, sipping iced tea. At first, Mai held back, but soon her story spilled out, no tears, no drama, just truth. About the glances, the blame, the feeling of being erased. Mai listened in silence, then said, "You're not wrong. But if you keep going like this, you'll disappear. No one should ever apologize for loving. And if they make you feel guilty for it, that's not family. That's prison." That night, Mai didn't cry. She wrote instead. One sentence, "I don't want to disappear just to be accepted." She began changing, not rebelliously but quietly. She read books again, she cooked new dishes, she didn't wake up before dawn to prepare breakfast. She didn't hover behind Nathan, she let herself be. One evening Nathan asked, "Are you okay?" She nodded, "I'm fine." But the word had lost its meaning. Later, he touched her arm, trying to connect. She looked at him and said, "Silence doesn't save anything, it just teaches people how to live without you." One morning, she found herself writing, "I don't need to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I just need to be someone I can live with." Nathan began to notice her distance, her quiet strength. He remembered the girl who once laughed easily, who used to reach for his hand. Now she stood apart, still there, but only barely. He remembered his vow, "I'll be your anchor." But he had let her drift. At dinner, when Madame Than criticized Mnai's slightly salty soup, something inside Nathan stirred. "It's just soup, Mom," he said gently. "Maybe it's the heat." It was the first time he'd said anything, and it changed everything. Later, he found her folding clothes. He sat beside her and said, "I'm sorry I left you alone in this." She didn't answer. He added, "I thought staying silent would keep the peace, but maybe I was wrong." She looked at him, eyes tired but clearer. Silence teaches people they don't matter. One night he joined her in the kitchen. She blinked in surprise. "You never cook." "I'm learning," he said. "I want to understand what you've carried." When his mother walked in, she frowned. "Men in the kitchen, what next?" Nathan looked at her and said calmly, "Helping my wife isn't weakness. It's normal, just something I've been too slow to learn." Madame Than said nothing, but something in her gaze shifted. She sat alone on the porch that evening, listening to the sounds of chopping, soft laughter, and the clinking of plates. It was foreign, but not unwelcome. Years ago, she too had once loved a soldier. He died young. Her dreams died with him. She had been forced to marry a wealthy, older man. He never hit her, never cheated. But he never once said her name with love. She had lived a life of duty, not joy. Now, watching her son laugh in the kitchen with his wife, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: vulnerability. She remembered one winter night when her husband had defended her quietly against his own mother's scolding. Just once. But it had meant the world. And yet she had never once stood up for Mnai. Instead, she'd become the very shadow she once feared. The next morning, while Mnai was hanging laundry, Madame Than came outside. She didn't scold, didn't sneer. Just stood beside her and said, "Tired." Mnai turned, startled. "No, mother." After a pause, the older woman said, "Being a daughter-in-law is hard. Being a mother-in-law isn't easy either." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. And to Mnai, it was enough. That evening, she wrote in her journal. She didn't say sorry, but I saw it in her eyes, a quiet regret. Maybe not just for what she did to me, but for the years she lived hurting and unloved. "I don't need her to kneel, I just want to be seen. As a person, not a threat." The house didn't change overnight, but the air softened. The table felt warmer. The glances became gentler, and for the first time, Mnai wasn't surviving. She was beginning to live.